Neat stacks of mistake notebooks lined the edge of the desk. The tip of my pen still bore the rough texture worn raw from cramming exercises late last night. A soft shuffle of slippers across the floor drifted in from outside the door, followed by G. Wanning's voice, sweet and mellow, laced with deliberate, cloying warmth, an exact match for the venomous tone etched deep into my soul. I snapped my gaze to the calendar spread open on the desk corner. The printed date was crystal clear. The day before the Municipal Unified Screening exam. Only one day separated me from the test that had rewritten both our fates. My heart constricted sharply, icy cold seeping through my veins to every limb and organ. All the suppressed grievances, resentment, and despair from my past life crashed over my mind like a tidal wave. That year, scores from this exam directly determined eligibility to apply for early admission to top-tier undergraduate universities. For 3 full years, I never closed my books before 1 a.m., pouring endless effort into compiling a complete set of key and difficult point notes, each page annotated with obscure exam topics the teachers had shared privately. G. Wanning lived in the same residential compound as me, clinging to me every day under the guise of my best friend. She stole most of my notes whenever I stepped out for lunch or to fetch water during evening self-study. Stealing my study materials was not enough. On exam day, she laced my thermos with heavy doses of sleep-inducing powder. Once inside the exam hall, my head spun, my vision blurred, and my writing hand shook nonstop. I left most of the major essay questions blank, barely scraping the cutoff score for private junior colleges. G. Wanning, meanwhile, relied on my notes to perform steadily and easily secured a spot at a prestigious university. Years later, I scraped by on odd jobs when I chanced upon her on the street, dressed in fine clothes and surrounded by new friends. She saw me in cheap work overalls and felt not an ounce of remorse. Instead, she laughed lightly and mocked me for being inherently slow-witted, saying all my hard work would amount to nothing. For years afterward, I struggled trapped at the bottom of society working assembly line shifts, waiting tables at restaurants, toiling day and night in a shambles of a life. She, on the other hand, sailed smoothly through university, landed a high-paying job at a major corporation, and stepped into a bright, unobstructed future. Countless nights, I drowned in regret, hating myself for misjudging people, for yielding out of soft-heartedness, for throwing away the future that should have been mine. Then, drenched to the bone by a torrential downpour, I stepped into the road in a daze and was struck by a truck. The last image in my mind before my eyes slid shut was G. Wanning's fake, gentle smile. When I opened my eyes again, I was 18. The day before the unified exam, I alone knew everything that lay ahead. G. Wanning remained completely oblivious, still putting on the act of a kind, thoughtful best friend, scheming nonstop over how to leech every advantage from me. Ji-ha, are you home? I bought fresh grapes and came to go over the math big problems with you so we'll feel steady going into tomorrow's exam. A soft knock echoed at the door, G. Wanning's gentle, harmless tone filtering through the wood. I slowly pulled my scattered focus back, my fingertips brushing the dense lines of problem-solving steps on the paper beneath them, a thick layer of calm masking the roiling hatred in my chest. In this life, I would never let anyone manipulate me again. Every plot and wound she'd inflicted on me in my past life would be returned to her tenfold, exactly as they were dealt. I stood and pulled the door open. G. Wanning stood outside clutching a small box of washed grapes. Her eyes crinkled into an innocent, harmless grin. She wore the identical white short-sleeve shirt we'd bought together on a shopping trip days prior. I just finished a full mock exam set and was about to take a break. Perfect timing. I stepped aside to let her in, my tone no different from usual, not a trace of cold distance to be heard. G. Wanning hurried into the study, her gaze locking instantly onto the thick core notebook sitting dead center on the desk, undisguised greed flickering across her features before she swiftly masked it. She set the grapes down on the table, dragged a chair to sit right beside me, and pressed her arm affectionately against mine. You're always the hardest worker. I can never pinpoint the key points flipping my textbooks at home, so I had to come bother you. Your notes are the most logically organized. Can I borrow them for 2 hours to flip through today? I'll give them back the second the exam ends tomorrow. Not a single page damaged. I promise. She asked for the notebook right away, using the exact same lines she'd spoken in my past life. Even her coaxing whine identical. I lowered my eyelids, twisting the pen between my fingers, sneering inwardly. In my past life, I'd softened and agreed. She'd rushed home to copy every word of my notes overnight, while I, deprived of my core study material, fell far behind on my own evening review. I still need to sort through and add several new exam points to these notes tonight. And I'm bringing them to the exam hall first thing tomorrow. I can't lend them to you right now. My voice stayed flat. No sharp edge of refusal, sounding merely like a reasonable arrangement. The smile faded slightly from Ji Wanning's face, a flicker of barely concealed irritation crossing her eyes, before her mild expression returned. I see. All right then. Skip the notes, just walk me through a few high-frequency big problems. I keep falling for the traps in analytic geometry. Sure. I flipped open the exercise workbook, pointed to several representative sample questions, and patiently walked her through the solution steps. As I explained, Ji Wanning's attention wandered constantly, her eyes drifting uncontrollably toward the notebook, every time she tentatively reached out to flip its pages. I subtly shifted the book to block her hand. After several failed attempts, she reined in her greed and pretended to listen intently, showering me with constant praise for my sharp mind and thorough review. Her compliments sounded sweet on the surface, yet reeked of seething jealousy. Once I'd foolishly taken them at face value, now they struck me as hollow and grating. We chatted until dusk. Ji Wanning rubbed her temples, furrowing her brows and putting on a show of anxious exhaustion. I think I'm just too stressed. I haven't slept a wink these past 2 nights. Tossing and turning in bed, my heart races just thinking about tomorrow's exam. My mind all muddled. I'm terrified I'll underperform. She turned to me, her tone pleading. Do you have insomnia too? I heard poor sleep the night before ruins your test performance the next day. Here it comes. I could clearly predict her next move. This was exactly how she tricked me into drinking water laced with sedative powder in my past life, using sleeplessness as her excuse. I nodded gently, playing along. I'm a little anxious too. My mom bought mild herbal calming granules last week, all plant-based with no side effects. A cup before bed calms your nerves and helps you sleep. I was planning to make one tonight. Ji Wanning's eyes lit up instantly, jumping at the opening. Does it really work? Can you make me a cup too? I'm so scared I'll lie awake all night and show up to the exam with a foggy brain tomorrow. She'd volunteered for the calming drink of her own accord, falling straight into my plan. I put on a look of tender concern and patted the back of her hand lightly. Of course we can drink it together. Finish it and rest early to save your energy for tomorrow's test. Wait here in the study a minute. I'll go brew it in the living room. With that, I left the study and walked to the storage cabinet in the living room. Tucked at the very back sat the calming granules Nianqiu had bought, a box holding 20 small sachets, each labeled to soothe mood and ease mild insomnia. A normal single dose brought peaceful sleep, but brewing 2 or 3 sachets at once induced overwhelming drowsiness within a short time. Clouded thinking, weak limbs, complete loss of focus. Exactly the effect I needed. Ji Wanning had ruined my future without mercy in my past life. Making her miss her exam with a double dose of the calming granules was hardly unfair, simply returning harm for harm. I pulled out 3 sachets, tore them open, and emptied all the powder into a clear glass. I poured in warm water and stirred until the white powder dissolved completely. The liquid held no odd color or strange odor, indistinguishable at a glance from a regular single serving. There was no visible clue to anything amiss. I brewed myself a separate cup with just 1 sachet, set both glasses on a tray, and carried them back to the study. Ji Wanning stood beside the desk, her fingertips resting lightly on the cover of my notebook. She pulled her hand back the second she heard my footsteps and turned to face me, her soft smile back in place. It's ready. I put extra in yours. Your insomnia is worse than mine, so a stronger dose will calm you better. I handed her the glass laced with 3 sachets, keeping the normal strength cup for myself. Ji Wanning harbored not a shred of suspicion. She took the warm glass with both hands and grinned at me. Ji-ha, you're too good to me, always looking out for me. I'm so lucky to have a best friend like you. without hesitation. She tilted her head back and drained the entire cup in a few gulps, even sipping up the last traces of liquid stuck to the bottom. I stood quietly, watching her finish every drop with a blank, unreadable expression. My mind crystal clear. The medicine would not kick in immediately. It would take roughly an hour to fully settle through her system, plenty of time for us to pack up and head to the exam venue together tomorrow morning. Finish your drink and sort out your review supplies soon. Don't stay up too late. Be in bed before 11. I spoke softly, maintaining my usual caring demeanor. Ji-Wanning set the empty glass on the table and let out a faint yawn, chalking it up to fatigue from days of cramming. Never linking it to the calming drink. Got it. I'll head home to pack my stationery in a minute. I'll meet you at the compound gate sharp at 7 tomorrow morning, and we'll take the bus to the exam site together, no rushing alone. All right. I'll be there on time. We chatted a little longer. With no chance left to borrow my notebook, Ji-Wanning had no reason to linger. She bid me farewell and left carrying her empty grape box. Silence settled back over the study. I stepped to the desk and picked up the core notebook, my fingers brushing over page after page of my handwritten notes. In my past life, all my hard work had served only as a stepping stone for her success. In this life, this notebook belonged solely to me, a tool to secure the perfect score I deserved. I packed the notebook, admission ticket, black gel pens, answer sheet pencil, and eraser all into a transparent exam bag, double-checking twice to ensure no essential item was missing. Once done, I picked up my own mild calming drink and sipped it slowly. Outside the window, daylight faded into soft twilight, and the bustle of pedestrians on the street died down. I sank into my chair, mapping out tomorrow's entire schedule in my head. Bus arrival times, travel duration to the exam venue, and the exact cutoff time for entry. Ji-Wanning would be crippled by the medicine tomorrow, dizzy, lethargic, slow-moving. All I needed to do was stall a little, and she would miss entry entirely. She'd only ever cared about leeching my study gains to score high marks, never sparing a single genuine thought for me. She'd sown the seed, and tomorrow she would reap its bitter fruit. I felt no guilt whatsoever. If she'd shown even a hint of mercy and not sabotaged me before the exam in my past life, I would never have taken this step. Every consequence circled back to choices she'd made with her own hands. Night deepened. I closed my exercise workbook, turned off the lamp, and lay down in bed. My heart utterly at peace, none of the pre-exam anxiety that had plagued me in my past life. I knew my own ability, free of outside interference. I would ace this unified exam and gain admission to the top university I'd long dreamed of. For Ji-Wanning, tomorrow awaited nothing but an unendurable, devastating collapse. I slept dreamlessly through the whole night. My alarm clock woke me sharp at 6 in the morning. The mild calming herbal granules had long been fully metabolized. When I opened my eyes, my mind was clear and sharp, my body loose and relaxed, free of the usual pre-exam tension and exhaustion. I washed up quickly, changed into my clean school uniform, and double-checked the transparent exam bag I'd packed the night before. My admission ticket, ID card, 2 brand new black gel pens, an answer sheet pencil, an eraser, and a ruler. Everything was there. When I walked into the living room, my mother Wenyanchio was packing breakfast. She slid warm soybean milk and sandwiches into an insulated bag and looked up at me with soft caution. Keep a level head for today's unified exam. Just perform as you normally do. Don't pile too much pressure on yourself. Did those calming granules I bought last night work well? Did you sleep soundly? I nodded naturally. Really well. I slept straight through till dawn and don't feel sleepy at all. That's a relief. When Yincho handed me the insulated bag. Is Wanning still meeting you to walk over together? Take your time on the road. Don't rush. And leave plenty of leeway to get into the exam hall. I took the bag with a reply. We're meeting at the compound gate at 7. I knew full well what Ji-Wanning had drunk the night before. 3 times the standard dose of the herbal calming granules. Taken alone. 1 sachet merely soothes frayed nerves and eases insomnia. It was a legitimate daily health supplement. But tripling the dosage wouldn't knock a person unconscious. It would only amplify sleep inertia. leaving the victim with persistent grogginess, weak limbs, scattered focus, and slowed reflexes come morning. A textbook case of being trapped in heavy sleep inertia. Every detail lined up with real pharmacological reactions. No exaggerated, unrealistic plot devices whatsoever. This was the exact measure I'd carefully calculated. I had no desire for some absurd, violent poison to backfire on her. What I wanted was a plausible, untraceable consequence, one she brought entirely upon herself. At exactly 7 o'clock, I reached the residential compound gate. The early autumn breeze carried a faint chill. Groups of uniformed students were already hurrying toward the exam venue at the intersection, most murmuring over test questions. Taut with nervousness, Ji Wanning arrived 2 minutes after me. I spotted something wrong with her the moment she came into view from afar. On ordinary days, she was always bright-eyed and energetic. Even after all-night cramming, she'd tidy herself up neatly with a polished smile. Today, however, her steps were unsteady, her lids drooping halfway over unfocused eyes. She looked as if she'd never woken up properly, her head swaying faintly every few seconds. And the way she rubbed her eyes reeked of bone-deep fatigue. She stopped in front of me and forced a smile, her voice rough and heavy with weariness. Ji-ha, I'm so sorry I almost overslept. My head's pounding so badly. I slept extremely soundly last night. But I woke up feeling limp all over, without an ounce of strength. Watching her struggle to stay alert, I felt nothing inside, yet kept up my warm, caring best friend facade on the surface. You're probably just tensed up over the exam. Extreme stress often leads to extra deep sleep. It's totally normal. My tone was casual, matching our usual gentle exchanges. Not a hint of oddity to be detected. Ji Wanning nodded and instinctively pressed her temples, her brows creasing faintly. I suppose that's it. My mind's all foggy right now. And everything seems to spin a little when I look at it. I just hope it clears up once I get into the exam. Hallie can't afford it messing with my test taking. She hadn't suspected the calming drink for a single second. Chalking her poor condition solely to pre-exam anxiety, this was exactly the outcome I'd engineered. Every lead-up had been laid flawlessly, without a single loose thread. Even if she replayed every detail 100 times later, she would only blame her frazzled mindset and oversleeping, never tracing the route back to me. I glanced down at my phone. 7:05. Admission to the exam halls would close at 8:20, with the gates sealing tight sharp at 8:30, an unbreakable rule enforced uniformly across all test sites in the city. No exceptions granted. The bus ride normally took 20 minutes, so walking to the stop and waiting for a bus left ample time. But I had no intention of letting her reach the venue punctually. Let's head to the bus stop. I lifted my exam bag and set off at a steady, unhurried pace, deliberately holding back my speed. Ji Wanning walked beside me, her once light steps growing slower and more labored by the minute. The sedative effects of the triple-dose granules were fully taking hold. The medicine had settled deep into her system during sleep. It wouldn't hit all at once upon waking, but bloomed gradually as she walked, strained her brain, and exerted even minor physical effort. We'd barely walked 100 meters out of the compound before she began gasping for breath, her head swimming so badly she could barely speak above a weak murmur. Ji-ha. I'm so unbearably sleepy. My eyelids feel too heavy to lift. It's strange. I slept a full 8 hours. I turned my head toward her, my voice soft as I played the devoted friend to perfection. Don't let the drowsiness get to you. We'll be at the test site soon. Hang in there. Slow down if you're really struggling. There's no rush. Though my words told her not to hurry, my own pace never slackened or slowed to accommodate her. Unable to match my rhythm, Ji Wanning had to force herself into tiny jogs to catch up. And every jolt sent the fog in her eyes deepening further. She pulled out her phone instinctively, hoping checking the time might rouse her spirits. But after staring at the screen for 2 seconds, she turned away, dizzy and lightheaded. I can't stand looking at the screen. It makes my head spin worse. My brain won't function at all. I'm just in a constant haze. I soothed her gently. Put your phone away. Staring at screens before exams strains your eyes. Just focus on walking. Ji Wanning obediently slipped her phone back into her pocket. blindly following every word I said. It was that very mask of meek compliance that had fooled me for 3 whole years. Everyone believed she relied on me, trusted me, and genuinely regarded me as her closest friend. Only the reborn me knew her core was nothing but selfishness and jealousy. She envied my self-discipline, my natural aptitude, my steady composure. She resented how I could consistently rank near the top of our grade without resorting to cheap tricks. That was why she'd stolen my notes, leached off my hard work, and destroyed my future, using me as a stepping stone to climb higher herself. Today was merely karmic retribution coming full circle. We reached the bus stop just as a direct bus bound for the exam venue pulled away. The next bus wouldn't arrive for another 15 minutes. In my past life, I would have panicked, urged her to hurry, even suggested taking a taxi for fear of missing entry. This life, however, I remained unshakably calm. We just missed it. But the next one will be here soon. We've got plenty of time. No need to panic. I leaned against the metal railing of the stop, utterly composed. Ji-Wanning was already drained of all energy. She leaned against my side, her head heavy, nearly slumping onto my shoulder. I'm so sleepy. What if I completely flop the exam? I can't focus on solving a single problem right now. My mind's totally blank. I stared down at her frail, helpless form, my heart cold as ice. She wasn't terrified of failing on her own merits. She was terrified that without my stolen notes to prop her up, she could never score high marks. Every ounce of confidence she'd ever held had been stolen property. I spoke softly, my tone sounding sincere yet edged with hidden sharpness. All your usual preparation is still there. Nothing will go wrong. Keeping a calm mind matters more than anything else. Ji-Wanning nodded weakly, her gaze unfocused as her attention began to drift. The 15 minutes slipped by in an instant, and the bus pulled up to the curb. I boarded first and grabbed a seat. Ji-Wanning gripped the handrail, staggering after me, and once she sat down, she rested her head against the window and closed her eyes for a quick doze. Her complexion washed out to a faint pale shade. For the entire ride, she remained trapped in grogginess. Whenever she cracked open her eyes, her stare was empty and vacant, devoid of the alert nervousness any exam candidate ought to carry. At 8:02, the bus arrived outside the exam venue gates. The entrance was swarming with people, countless students and parents packed together, teachers lining up to take attendance, and a loudspeaker looping entry instructions, filling the air with a solemn, tense atmosphere. Any normal examinee would have stood up immediately and rushed to queue for admission. But the second Ji-Wanning stepped off the bus, she stumbled, clutching tightly to a roadside metal railing as a violent wave of vertigo crashed over her. Her face blanched instantly, her body swaying unsteadily on the verge of collapse. I can't. My head spinning nonstop. I can't walk a single step. Her voice cracked with the threat of tears, pure panic flooding her eyes. The medicine had reached its full peak effect. Muscles turned limp, balance completely disrupted. Mental reflexes slowed to a crawl. Every single symptom manifested precisely as planned. It would not harm her permanently or endanger her life. Yet it robbed her entirely of the capacity to take the exam, rendering her barely able to move. I rushed forward with feigned alarm to steady her arm, speaking urgently. Why has this hit you so badly all of a sudden? Could it be low blood sugar? Lean here and catch your breath for a moment. I'll stay with you. I made no move to rush her toward the gates, no effort to drag her forward. I simply held her steady, lingering by the roadside to let her recover. This was my final delay. Every second we wasted pushed her further away from the exam hall, further away from the future she'd coveted. Ji-Wanning clung to my arm for dear life, her body trembling faintly, her eyes stinging with pain. What do I do? I feel awful. I can barely keep my eyes open. I have no strength left anywhere. Take it easy. You'll feel better soon. You probably caught a chill walking out into the morning wind. My soft consolations and caring posture were flawless. Any onlooker would have deemed me the most loyal friend imaginable. A steady stream of students filed past us into the venue, the queue shrinking visibly before our eyes as more and more candidates entered. The The venue loudspeaker crackled to life again, its stern broadcast echoing across the entire grounds. A gentle reminder. Admission for this municipal screening unified exam will close at 8:30 sharp. Entry will cease at 8:20. All examinees are requested to enter the hall in order as soon as possible. No late entry will be permitted. The announcement repeated on a loop, each iteration counting down the end of Ji Wanning's academic prospects. The second she heard the broadcast, panic crashed over her. She forced her body forward. Yet the moment she lifted one leg to step ahead, her knees buckled, and she nearly crumpled to the pavement. I held her firmly, my voice laced with perfectly measured concern. Don't push yourself too hard, you'll hurt yourself if you overexert. Get your bearings steady before we move on. My seemingly thoughtful gesture had sealed off her last chance to enter the exam hall entirely. In her current state, she could not walk at a quick pace, let alone wait in line, pass security checks, and find her assigned desk inside the hall. 8:15 arrived. Hardly any students remained outside the gates. All homeroom teachers had led their classes inside, and parents were slowly dispersing. The wide entrance stood empty save for a handful of stragglers suffering poor physical conditions. Sleepiness was completely overpowered by Ji Wanning's mounting terror. Her eyes flooded with tears, her voice breaking into quiet sobs. Ji-ha. We're out of time. Hurry. I have to get in to take the exam. Watching her weep in desperation, I felt not a shred of sympathy. In my past life, I had been far more helpless, far more despairing. 12 years of diligent study, all ruined in one day by her sabotage. I'd had no one to cry to, no one to comfort me, no one waiting beside me. I let out a soft sigh, putting on an expression of helpless pity. I'll support you as we walk. Take it slow, don't rush. I deliberately dragged my feet as I guided her forward, each step heavy and drawn out. It took us a full 5 minutes to cover a mere few dozen meters. 8:20. The crisp bell signaling the end of entry rang out on schedule. Cold. Final. Leaving no room for compromise. The exam hall gates slid shut the instant the bell faded. Invigilator Meng Yinzhou stood at the threshold with a grave expression, holding out a hand to block all candidates who'd failed to enter on time. Admission is closed. No further entry permitted. All absent examinees will be marked as automatic no-shows. I held up the limp, tear-streaking Ji Wanning. Stopping exactly 3 meters away from the sealed gates, the hall stood just out of reach, and her entire future lay shattered beyond that narrow divide. The moment the final bell marking the end of admissions faded completely, Ji Wanning froze solid. All the panic and forced defiance she'd clung to a second ago crumbled the instant the iron gate slammed shut. Every ounce of strength drained from her body in an instant. She clamped her fingers around my wrist so hard her knuckles blanched and stretched taut, and warm tears splashed unannounced onto the back of my school uniform sleeve. The cold dampness mixed with her uncontrollable trembling, raw and glaringly real. It's closed. Ji-ha. The gates shut. Her voice broke, rough and hoarse, repeating the sentence over and over in stunned terror, her hollow eyes fixed rigidly on the sealed exam hall entrance. Meng Yinzhou, the invigilator standing at the gate, lowered the arm he'd used to block late arrivals. He restated the exam rules flatly to the handful of students lingering outside, his tone rigid and impartial. Not a shred of room for leniency. All unified exam regulations have been published online for public viewing. Admissions close sharply at 8:20 a.m. with 0 exceptions. Absentees bear full responsibility for the consequences. Exam results will be voided, and eligibility for this round of early admission to key undergraduate universities will be revoked entirely. The words crashed down on Ji Wanning like a sledgehammer. She jerked her head up, her eyes bloodshot and her face streaked with tears. Her previously unfocused gaze sharpened abruptly as she stared straight at me, her tone thick with overwhelming grievance and accusation. It's all my fault. I was just in such terrible shape this morning. If we'd walked faster, if I hadn't been so sleepy, I would have made it inside. I lowered my eyes to her red-rimmed eyes, feeling not the slightest stir of emotion in my heart. Even now, she could only wallow in self-pity, blaming luck and her physical state. never suspecting me for a single second. In her mind, I was her most loyal best friend who catered to her every need and helped her at every turn, someone who could never scheme against her. This was the biggest flaw forged by her decades of hypocrisy and greed. I pulled my hand away from her arm, furrowed my brows slightly, and put on a look of shock and heartache. My voice was soft and sincere, perfectly matching the persona I'd maintained for years. I never imagined this would happen. We left with more than enough time. I had no idea you'd suddenly fall unwell. I slowed my speech deliberately, every line grounded in reality with no trace of forced innocence. Ji Wanning drew a ragged sniffle, tears streaming harder. Her body remained weak and unsteady, the lingering fog of the sedative still clouding her mind, leaving her barely able to stand upright. I truly don't understand what's wrong with me. I've never felt like this before. I went to bed so early, yet I woke up drained of all energy, dizzy the second I take a step. Did the exam stress wreck my body? She mumbled to herself, weeping and drowning in self-doubt, pinning every problem solely on her own mental state and health. I lifted a hand and patted her back gently, my tone laced with just the right amount of regret. It's almost certainly from pulling all-nighters cramming these past few days. You've stayed up until the wee hours every night prepping for this exam. It's only natural your body couldn't hold up. I handed her a perfectly reasonable explanation, sealing off any possibility of suspicion taking root in her mind. The few other late students lingering nearby were picked up by their parents one by one, leaving the gate completely deserted. Only Ji Wanning and I standing alone on the empty pavement. A broadcast announcing exam hall discipline echoed from inside the campus, faintly audible through the thick iron doors. The orderly, composed atmosphere within stood in brutal contrast to our miserable state out here. Ji Wanning leaned against a roadside lamppost, clutching her exam bag tightly to her chest. The brand new stationery and printed admission ticket inside now felt like a cruel, mocking joke. This unified screening exam was seniors' only chance to apply for early admission to top-tier undergraduate programs. Miss this opportunity, and even a strong score on the official college entrance exam later would disqualify her from early admission, cutting her off from the majority of elite university spots. She'd studied relentlessly for 3 years, devoting most of her energy to copying my study methods and stealing my review materials, betting everything on leaping ahead of me with this exam. In the end, she hadn't even made it through the gate. It's all over. Everything's ruined. Ji Wanning bowed her head, her shoulders heaving with suppressed, broken sobs. My parents took time off work so I could study at home without distractions. I stayed up memorizing concepts and grinding past exam papers, and now I can't even sit for the test. Her despair was vivid and genuine, yet all I felt was profound satisfaction. In my past life, I'd crumpled just like this, holding a disastrous exam slip while facing my parents' disappointed stares, enduring endless nights of self-loathing. Meanwhile, she'd paraded the high marks she'd stolen from me, bathing in everyone's praise and envy. I stood quietly beside her, waiting patiently for her outburst to ebb, my voice carrying the helplessness any ordinary friend would feel. Don't grieve so deeply, your health matters most. Your head's still spinning terribly. Don't stand here too long. Ji Wanning snapped her head up to look at me, her eyes burning with obsessive resentment. Do you think we could beg the teachers? I'm only a few minutes late, and I wasn't dragging my feet on purpose. I was really unwell. Could they make an exception for me? Without waiting for my reply, she stumbled and lurched toward the school gate. Her weakened body, compounded by wild emotional turmoil, left her staggering. After only 2 shaky steps, her vision swam, and she pitched forward headfirst. I gave her a light tug just in time to steady her, my movement measured with pinpoint precision. I had no intention of harming her. I only meant for her to reap the bitter fruit of her own choices. Don't go. I spoke softly to stop her, my tone earnest. This is a municipal unified exam with ironclad rules. No staff member has the authority to bend them. Every year, students arrive late or fall ill mid-morning. Yet not a single special allowance has ever been granted. Going over there will be nothing but a waste of energy. Every word I said was the unvarnished truth. Large-scale standardized examinations in reality have zero tolerance for rule-breaking. No matter how unwell or distraught a candidate may be, this formed the unbreakable logical backbone of my entire plan. Ji Wanning froze on the spot. Her last flicker of hope snuffed out entirely. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as her posture wilted completely. What am I supposed to do? Did I waste 3 years of studying for nothing? She looked to me, begging and clinging to me for support. Ji-ha. Your grades are outstanding. Can't you think of some way to fix this? We're best friends. Please help me. A cold sneer curled inside my chest. Best friends. Had she spared a single thought of our friendship when she destroyed my entire future in my past life? When she copied the notes I'd spent countless nights compiling, climbed the ladder of success atop my hard work, and watched me plummet to rock bottom while sneering at my misfortune, had she felt even a shred of mercy then? Outwardly, however, I remained calm and gentle-eyed, my tone heavy with helplessness. I truly have no way to help you. These regulations are set uniformly by the Education Bureau. Not even the principal or our homeroom teacher has the power to alter them. Wanning, we have to accept this loss. My refusal was mild yet unshakable, flawless, leaving her no room to find fault with me. Ji Wanning surrendered completely, slumping dejectedly onto the stone steps by the road. She buried her face in her hands, broken muffled sobs drifting through the empty air. Autumn winds swept across the deserted school gate. All traces of the morning bustle vanished, leaving only silence and desolation to wrap around her. I glanced down at my phone. 8:28 a.m. Only 2 minutes remained until the exam officially began. I bent forward and patted her shoulder lightly, speaking earnestly. I have to head in now, the test's starting any second. I can't delay any longer. Try to calm yourself down here and don't wander off. I'll come find you as soon as the exam ends. Ji Wanning kept her head bowed and mumbled a faint response. Too drained to press me further, I lingered no longer, turned, and walked toward the exam hall entrance with unhurried composure. As I passed the invigilator, Meng Yanzhou glanced over and quickly cross-checked my admission ticket and ID card with efficient, brisk movements. On-time admission. Hurry to your seat. Thank you, sir, I replied softly and stepped calmly into the exam hall. The moment I walked down the corridor and entered the testing room, every ounce of tension melted away from my heart. Neat rows of desks, quiet fellow examinees, the faint rustle of test papers being distributed, everything felt steady and orderly. This was the exam hall I'd lost in my past life, the bright starting point that should have belonged to me all along. In my previous lifetime, Ji Wanning had stolen my future with despicable tricks, leaving me haunted by lifelong regret. In this life, I was merely reclaiming what was mine, letting her experience firsthand what it meant to lose everything. I located my assigned seat and sat down, setting my exam bag on the corner of the desk. My fingertips brushed the smooth desktop, and an unprecedented sense of peace settled over me. Sunlight filtered through the glass windows, spilling gently over the blank test paper. No anxiety, no unease, only unwavering certainty that I would succeed. For everyone else, this exam was a gamble. For me, it was redemption. Outside the gate, Ji Wanning would linger, drowning in endless regret and collapse, slowly accepting the reality of her absence, tasting a fraction of the agony I'd endured in my past life. Good and evil each reap their due, and fate always comes full circle. That is all there is to it. The tip of my pen moved steadily and surely across the answer sheet. I knew every question type and exam point in the paper like the back of my hand, never pausing or hesitating for a single moment. The only sounds filling the hall were the faint scratch of pens on paper and the soft tread of invigilators patrolling back and forth. Occasional distant street noises drifted through the windows, yet nothing could distract my focus. The 2 exam sessions stretched on, and 4 hours slipped by in the blink of an eye. When the loudspeaker announced the end of the test, I set down my pen calmly, stacked my answer sheet and exam paper neatly at the edge of my desk, and waited quietly for Meng Yanzhou to collect them. When I stepped out of the exam hall, the sun hung low in the western sky. Groups of students clustered together to discuss the test simulated, some dejected, all their emotions riding on this exam that would shape their futures. I did not stop to chat with anyone and headed straight for the school gate. My mind fixed on Ji Wanning, who had sat listlessly on the stone steps earlier. I spotted her from afar, still perched in the same spot, a dry fallen leaf beneath her hips. She clutched her transparent exam bag tight to her chest, her head buried between her knees, her shoulders trembling faintly now and then. Passing parents and students glanced over at her from time to time, but she paid them no heed. I walked slowly to her side and spoke softly. "I'm finished with the exam." Ji Wanning jerked her head up. Her eyes were badly swollen, streaked with red at the corners and crisscrossed with bloodshot veins. The heavy drowsiness and weakness of the morning had faded significantly, replaced by a thick numbness and bitter resentment. She stared at my empty pencil case, her lips parting slightly before a hoarse voice stumbled out after a long pause. "Were the questions hard? Did you get through everything smoothly?" It was fine. All the question types were ones I've practiced repeatedly. Nothing tripped me up. I answered truthfully in a flat tone. No trace of boastfulness, merely stating how the exam had gone. Those words pricked through the fragile emotional barrier she had barely held intact. Ji Wanning clenched her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms, jealousy surging in her eyes before she forced it down, replacing it with a look of wrong sorrow. "You're so lucky. I didn't even get to touch a test paper. I've sat here thinking all morning, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I was just a little sleepy. How could I have missed entry entirely?" She rubbed her aching temples, a faint trace of doubt lacing her words as she silently replayed every detail of the previous day. I knew clearly that she sensed something off, yet possessed no evidence to suspect me. She had asked for the calming drink of her own volition. The herbal granules were ordinary household health supplements. No one else had been present while I prepared the water, and I had stayed by her side the entire time. Every gesture above reproach. When I woke up this morning, my whole body felt limp and unsteady on my feet. Could it have been that calming water? Ji Wanning whispered, her gaze probing my face. I had long prepared my response, my expression natural, even tinged with mild surprise. How could it be? I drank some too yesterday. Only one small sachet. I slept soundly and woke up refreshed this morning without a hint of discomfort. You said your insomnia was severe, so I added 2 extra packets for you. For most people, a higher dosage only brings deeper sleep. It shouldn't impair movement. It's almost certainly the exhaustion from days of all-night cramming coinciding with the calming effect. That's why you reacted so strongly. The logical explanation lay before her, every point reasonable and unarguable. Ji Wanning pressed her lips tight, replaying the scene from the night before in her mind. She had been the one to ask for the warm calming drink, the one who drained it without a second thought. Every step had been her own choice. She dropped her gaze, her long eyelashes hiding the desolation in her eyes, murmuring quietly, "Maybe I'm just terribly unlucky. My parents had such high hopes for this exam. They told me to stay calm last night. Now I've missed the test, and I have no idea how to tell them when I get home. Just explain to Uncle and Auntie honestly that you felt unwell and missed entry. They might be upset at first, but they'll understand eventually." I comforted her, maintaining my role as her caring best friend. This is only the early admission screening. The official college entrance exam is still ahead in June. Fill in your knowledge gaps well, and you'll still have a shot at a good university. My words sounded consoling, yet they struck at her deepest insecurity. She knew better than anyone that without my review notes to rely on, her own foundation could never compete with the top students in our grade. Early admission had been her only shortcut to pull ahead, and now that path was completely blocked. Ji Wanning let out a bitter laugh, her eyes filled with defeat. It's not that simple. Early admission secures spots at most top universities. Missing this round will make the official exam far more competitive. All the time I spent sorting out question types has gone to waste. Most of the question types she claimed to have sorted out had been secretly copied from my notes whenever she'd begged to borrow them in the past. Once, my soft heart had let her trail after me and flip through my materials at will. Looking back, every compromise had sown the seeds of my ruin. This life. I guarded all my review materials tightly, never giving her the slightest opening. stripped of her core reference materials. Her academic weaknesses were laid bare for all to see. Homeroom teachers led their classes away one after another along the roadside. Tao Qinglan walked over with the crowd and spotted the haggard Ji Wanning sitting on the stone steps at once, hurrying over with a furrowed brow. Wanning, I didn't see you enter the exam hall all morning. The security guard at the gate said you missed entry time. What exactly happened? Faced with her teacher's questioning, all the grievance Ji Wanning had bottled up spilled over. Tears streamed down her face as she choked out the whole story of her dizziness and slow reflexes that had made her miss gate closure, carefully omitting any mention of the calming drink and blaming everything on pre-exam anxiety, insomnia and sudden physical discomfort. After listening, Tao Qinglan sighed, her tone heavy with regret yet unyielding to the exam rules. I sent repeated reminders in the class group about entry times and told everyone to arrive half an hour early. In previous years, students who arrived late due to illness were all marked absent without exception. This is a hard rule set by the Education Bureau, and I have no authority to change it. What's done is done. No amount of sorrow can alter the result. Go home, adjust your mindset, and focus all your energy on the official June college entrance exam. Ji Wanning pressed forlornly. Teacher, is there really no way to make up for it? Even a separate retake exam would suffice. There is no retake system. This screening exam is held only once a year. Missing it voids your score entirely with no second chances. Tao Qinglan patted her shoulder, then turned to look at me standing quietly aside, her voice softening noticeably. Su Jihe, you look composed. You must have performed steadily. All your hard work these months hasn't been for nothing. Thank you. Teacher, I did my best to finish all the questions. I nodded slightly in reply. Tao Qinglan offered Ji Wanning a few more brief words of comfort before being called away by another student's parent, leaving only the two of us behind. Daylight faded fast. Streetlights flickered on one by one along the road, and the evening wind carried a crisp autumn chill. Ji Wanning shivered, stood up silently, and tightened her grip on her exam bag. Let's head home. There's no point staying here any longer. Her voice was low, stripped of the light cheerfulness with which she used to cling to me and chatter nonstop. We walked side by side toward the residential compound in complete silence. Normally, she would chatter endlessly about exam questions, ask me to explain knowledge points, or ramble about trivial daily matters. Now she deliberately kept half a step away from me, a vague rift lingering in her heart, held back only by years of supposed best friendship that kept her from cutting ties outright. When we reached the fork leading to our separate apartment buildings, she halted and turned to look at me, her expression tangled and unreadable. Jihe, thank you for staying with me through all this today. I'll go home and explain everything to my parents first. I probably won't come over to study with you these next few days. It's fine. Talk things through with your family and don't burden yourself too much. I spoke as I always did, making no move to urge her to stay nor pushing her away, keeping a perfectly measured distance. Ji Wanning nodded faintly, then turned and walked toward her building. Her thin figure faded into the shadow of the stairwell, her steps heavy, never glancing back at me once. I returned home alone. When Ningxia sat waiting for me on the living room sofa and stood up immediately to hand me a cup of warm water the moment I walked in. All finished. I've been worrying all day you might underperform. Wanning went to the exam venue with you this morning. Why didn't she come back alongside you? She suddenly felt terribly unwell when we set off, overcome by dizziness and missed entry time. She's marked absent. I recounted the events briefly, omitting the critical detail of the calming drink and only giving a vague general explanation. When Nianqiu's face filled with shock, then deep regret. That girl always seems so diligent. Yet she stumbled right at the crucial moment. Her parents will be heartbroken when they find out. Thankfully, everything went smoothly for you. Did those calming granules I bought last night work well? Did they affect your focus during the test? Not at all. My mind stayed sharp the entire time. Answering questions felt effortless. I set down my exam bag, walked to my desk, and opened my full set of review notes, my fingertips brushing the dense handwritten annotations. This unified screening exam was only the first step. The smooth path that belonged to me had only just begun. Ji Wanning, consumed by years of greed and scheming, had reaped the bitter consequences of her own making. In the days ahead, our fate-close friendship would fray little by little, and our once intertwined life paths would diverge completely, heading in opposite directions forever. I felt not an ounce of guilt. From start to finish, I had merely returned every hurt exactly as she had dealt it to me. She had ruined my future with her own hands in my past life. In this life, I had only let her taste the despair of losing a life-altering opportunity. Every consequence was a karmic retribution she had brought upon herself. The day the unified exam results were released, the class group chat exploded with activity. Tao Qinglan taped the printed ranking list to the back wall of the classroom, and the whole class crowded around it, a chorus of gasps and sighs blending together. I stood on the outskirts of the throng. I did not need to push forward to know exactly where I ranked. Voices of classmates squeezing through the crowd drifted over non-stop. Suji has top 3 in the whole grade. She can pick any early admission university she wants. She's always had a solid foundation, and she performs steadily this exam. It's only natural. These words washed over me without stirring the slightest ripple in my heart. This honor should have been mine in my past life. Yet Ji Wanning had stolen the spotlight by copying my notes. Now everything had returned to its rightful place. This was simply the outcome I deserved. I walked slowly over to the ranking sheet and scanned the list from top to bottom. Ji Wanning's name sat alone in the absent exam column, marked with faint gray small print. No screening score obtained. Eligibility for early undergraduate admission revoked. Suddenly, slow, stifled footsteps sounded behind me. I turned my head to see Ji Wanning standing a short distance away, her face ashen white, her gaze glued rigidly to that line of text, her hands clenched tight at her sides, her knuckles bluish white. She had barely come to see me for over a month. When we chanced upon each other in the residential compound, she would only lower her head and hurry off. None of the clingy, inseparable devotion she'd shown me before remained. She felt my stare and lifted her eyes to meet mine. Her gaze swirled with jealousy, resentment, and barely concealed bitterness. Though she forced all those emotions down quickly, she stepped forward, her voice dry and raspy. "Congratulations on such great scores." "Thank you." My tone was calm, neither deliberately distant nor overly warm, striking a perfect balance. Ji Wanning's eyes drifted back to the ranking sheet. Her Adam's apple bobbed twice as she spoke quietly. "I've crammed practice questions non-stop at home these weeks, but without an early admission quota. Even if I ace the college entrance exam, the universities open to me will be far inferior. My parents sigh at me every day, saying I wasted an irreplaceable opportunity. Stay focused on filling your knowledge gaps over the remaining months. There will still be plenty of options in the official college entrance exam." I consoled her evenly. The words stung her like thorns. She tugged her lips into a strained smile. "It's easy for you to say. You have early admission as a safety net, so you have nothing to worry about. I'm nothing like you without your notes. I can't wrap my head around most of the key and difficult concepts." She dropped her gentle pretense at last, laying bare the thoughts she had bottled up deep inside for months. In the past, she had begged for my study materials under the guise of being my best friend, and my soft-hearted compromises had let her take my hard work for granted as a ladder to her own success. Now that I had guarded all my notes tightly, stripped of her crutch, her academic weaknesses were laid bare. The imbalance festering in her heart could no longer be hidden behind a mild facade. Studying ultimately relies on sorting out and summarizing knowledge yourself. Relying on others' materials will never fix the root problem. I replied flatly. At those words, her face darkened instantly. She said nothing more to me, spun around, and strode back to her desk, where she slumped over and never lifted her head again. Tao Qinglan walked over and patted my shoulder gently. "I've watched all your hard work this semester. Remember to attend the early admission volunteer guidance session on time. With your scores, you're a shoo-in for the top public undergraduate universities in our province." "I will be there punctually. Thank you, Teacher Tao." A week later, the university recruitment presentation filled the classroom with students and accompanying parents. When Nianqiu sat beside me, flipping through university brochures, her face soft with relief. I bent over to filter majors against my scores. My plans clear and my future stretching bright ahead. At the venue entrance, I ran into G wanting arguing with her mother. Her mother's voice was low yet sharp. Every sentence heavy with disappointment. I told you time and again to get to the exam hall on time, but you just had to fall ill and miss your chance. Now you have to give up all the good universities, either settle for ordinary second-tier colleges or go straight out to work. Choose one path. G wanting hung her head, her voice thick with grievance. I couldn't fight the drowsiness that morning. I never meant to miss the exam. What's the use of saying that now? You left the house the same time as Susie. Why was she completely fine? Her mother's question made G wanting jerk her head up. Her gaze darted instinctively toward me inside the hall, brimming with seething fury. Yet she had no evidence to back up her suspicions, so she could only bite her lip, unable to utter a single retort. I looked away, ignoring the mother and daughter's quarrel, and turned to discuss major choices with Wenyencio. For the rest of Senior 3's exam preparation period, I buried myself wholeheartedly in my textbooks, consistently ranking among the top of the grade. Tao Qinglan often used my exam papers as model examples to go over in class. Ji wanting cut off all contact with me entirely. She kept to herself every day, frequently unable to answer core knowledge points when called on in class. And her rankings in mock exams slid steadily downward, leaving her quieter and gloomier by the day. The June college entrance exam arrived as scheduled. I maintained a steady mindset through every subject and walked out of the exam hall feeling completely unburdened. Ji Wanning and I were assigned to different test centers. When we crossed paths, we only passed each other without exchanging a word. On the day the college entrance exam results were released, my total score far exceeded the admission cutoff for key undergraduate universities. And I soon received the admission letter from my dream school. The bright red envelope rested on my desk as Wenyencio's eyes glistened with tears. Flipping through the thick stack of notes I had compiled over 3 years, all those late nights of hard studying have finally paid off. I earned every bit of this. That same day, I spotted Ji Wanning carrying luggage downstairs in our compound. In her hand was an admission notice from an ordinary junior college. Her face numb with despair, her mother stood beside her, her tone full of helplessness. Junior college tuition is expensive, and its teaching resources can't compare to undergraduate schools. Our family's finances are modest. We can only scrape together enough to fund your 3 years there. Ji Wanning looked up and caught sight of the prestigious university admission letter in my hands. Her footsteps halted. After a long pause, she walked toward me of her own accord, her tone tangled with complex emotions. I truly envy how smooth your path forward is. I've thought about it endlessly. That sudden overwhelming drowsiness that morning must have had something to do with that calming drink the night before. But I have no proof. And I asked for it myself. I can't blame anyone else. Only now had she pieced together the full truth. Yet every consequence stemmed from choices she had made with her own hands, leaving her no grounds to argue. Every path is forged step by yourself. You must bear all your own choices and their outcomes, I said softly, offering no extra comfort. I turned and left with Wenyencio. When September enrollment came, I dragged my suitcase through the gates of my key university. Brand new classrooms, a vast library, and student club activities unfolded a brand new life before me. In my spare time, I kept up my self-discipline, steadily boosting my major grades and making steady, sincere new friends. I no longer needed to cater to a deceitful best friend harboring malicious schemes. When I returned home for winter vacation at year's end, I chanced upon Ji Wanning in a street shop. She juggled a part-time job alongside her junior college coursework, rushing from one errand to another each day. Exhaustion etched deep in her eyes. When she saw me from afar, she only stepped aside to avoid me, no longer daring to come over to speak. Once we had spent every waking hour together. Yet she had coveted my years of accumulated study material and secretly plotted to ruin my future. Reborn a second time, I had resorted to no extreme cruelty, only returning to her the exact harm she had inflicted on me, letting her taste the crushing despair of losing a life-defining opportunity for herself. There was no unprovoked malice, only the endless cycle of cause and effect. She had sown seeds of greed and jealousy, and now she had to reap the bitter fruit of a derailed future. Meanwhile, I had broken free from the mire of my past life, firmly grasping the bright destiny that belonged to me alone. Our two life trajectories diverged completely, never to cross again. The story reached its final close.